Hey, welcome back to my channel. My name is Carter, and tonight I just got out of seeing one of my most anticipated movies of the year, which was Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga. And if I'm being honest, Mad Max Fury Road from 2015 is one of my favorite action films of all time. I remember watching it when I was like 13, 14 on like some illegal streaming app when it came out because I wasn't old enough to see it in theaters, and I got the chills. I was so excited, and I still get that same feeling rewatching Fury Road to this day. I rewatched it on Monday, and I was just so hyped, and I could not wait for Furiosa. Of course, there's a few things here that kind of slowed down the hype train for me, is that it'd been so long since Mad Max. However, I was still very excited for it, and what did I think about it? Let's get right into that. So have you seen Furiosa? What did you think about it? Were you excited for it? Were you not excited for it? How does it measure up to Fury Road for you personally? How does it measure up to the older Mad Max films? And the cast and crew for this is honestly pretty stacked. Furiosa is directed by George Miller, who did the original Mad Max films. He did Fury Road. He also wrote this movie with the help of Nico Lathouris. Stars Anya Taylor-Joy and Chris Hemsworth. And the cinematography is done by Simon Duggan. And going right into the positives here, I adored this movie. I think the action is still as sharp as it ever was. There's a lot in here that is very reminiscent of Mad Max Fury Road with the sped up reload sequences or the little sequences of just sped up action, mundane action like reloading or someone running, just small things in the original Mad Max. Like when Tom Hardy reloads the gun when they're going through the canyon, it's sped up and it just adds to the intensity and the high octane feel of that scene in 2015's Fury Road. And I think that George Miller uses the right amount here to make it feel like Fury Road, yet is also very distinct. This film's action is a lot more brutal, I'd say, than Fury Road. Fury Road definitely had its fair share of brutality and blood, but it feels like more and more blood is in this film. George Miller he just loves blood, gore, cars, and Australia, and you can see all of that here. The cinematography by Simon Duggan is on full display, and both Miller and Duggan's eyes for the camera and just for how shots will look here is so good. And with the Mad Max films, especially Fury Road and Furiosa, a lot of the editing style, the lighting choices, or the cinematography choices are very strange. In more conventional films, they wouldn't work. They should not work in normal films. Like if you were watching, let's say, like a Mission Impossible film and it did that quick zoom onto Ethan Hunt or a John Wick and he does like the sped up reload, it just would look weird. It would feel out of place. But in this world of Mad Max, in the world of the wasteland, it fits so well. It fits in 2015 and it fits now. Of course, it does take a minute to get used to those stylistic changes, but when you get on board, you get on board fully. You are all here for it. And the characters, the set design, the costumes, the language, the dialogue is just all adding up to be this zany, just off-kilter Australian wasteland, and I really think that it works here in Furiosa. A lot of Furiosa is set to be building up towards Fury Road. You get answers to some questions that you were thinking of, you get some answers to questions that you had no idea you wanted answers for, and I think that this movie toes the line between being very overbearing with answering questions and being very vague. Most of the time, it just absolutely nails everything you want to see from Furiosa, how she came to be, who she is, and so you more understand the character when she's in Fury Road. Speaking of Furiosa, Anya Taylor-Joy does a great job here. She doesn't show up for about an hour into the film, if my math is right. I'm not sure, but it seems like it's so long before she shows up. It starts out with her origin, where she's from, everything like that. Once Anya Taylor-Joy comes into the picture, the film for me just picks up so much in both intensity and emotion and drive. I just think that the film really shifts into third gear when Anya Taylor-Joy shows up, and her performance is a big part of that. She's very physical. You can see her acting through her eyes so well, especially because Furiosa isn't really a character with a ton of dialogue. Charlize Theron did a great job of that in Fury Road. Anya Taylor-Joy does a great job of that here. She might have more dialogue here than in Fury Road. It might be the same. I'm honestly not too sure, but I think both actresses did a great job of portraying Furiosa in different stages of life and showing how the wasteland can just mold and break people. So Anya Taylor-Joy was great, but for me, the standout here was Chris Hemsworth. Honestly, we've never really seen Chris Hemsworth cut loose before in a film. I would say maybe Bad Times at the El Royale was the last time I can remember he played a distinct villain role He can be very fun, and he's always very charismatic in every movie he's in. But as much as I love the Marvel films, as you can tell, he is very locked into that character of playing Thor, and he will probably get typecast quite a bit. I'm so happy that George Miller and the casting director here, who is Nikki Barrett, I had to look that up because she deserves all the props here. Chris Hemsworth is so good in this film. He elevates the character of Dementus. Yeah, Dementus. They say his name like a million times. He just elevates Dementus to be so much more than he is. And he is like the one through line throughout the whole film. Dementus is always there. He's always has a presence. Even though Immortan Joe, the Bullet Farmer, the People Eater are in this film, Dementus is always on your mind because of Hemsworth's performance and the amazing dialogue and just all the stuff he's given by George Miller throughout the film. I'm a sucker for when heroes and villains exchange ideas or ideals or morals. I love that. Or when they just kind of banter back and forth. My favorite moments in films are when heroes and villains interact and you just get to see the stark differences or the similarities between them, and I think Furiosa does that so well. A lot of the film is focused on Furiosa and Dementus' relationship throughout her life, and I think that it focuses on it in a way that I really loved, especially in the third act. When everything gets amped up to 11, you just get this long scene in the film that is like 3 to 5 minutes of Furiosa and Dementus just having a conversation, just going back and forth about ideals. And you get to see just how crazy Dementus really is and how unhinged Chris Hemsworth's performance is. And I honestly can't give enough props to Hemsworth for this role and for Miller to giving him this role. It is so good. Far and away my favorite part of the film. If you take a shot every time I say Fury Road or Mad Max Fury Road, you'll probably die by the end of this video. In Fury Road, there's another. Immortan Joe is really interesting. He's pretty engaging, but compared to Dementus here, Dementus just steals the screen from everybody. He steals the show from everything, and he's always on your mind. He might even overshadow Furiosa a little bit in her own movie, just because his personality and the range of him is just so wide. His personality is so big. The emotions Hemsworth get to play with, mostly just loony, being wacky, or what does he say? He said bonkers, I think, in the movie all the time. He's a full-blown Australian, and I just love it. It's the best thing about this movie. I can't sing the praises enough. It is so much fun just to watch him let loose after so long trapped in the Marvel Cinematic Universe or doing things like Ghostbusters. This movie is a lot more character-driven, I would say, than being one long action sequence car chase like Fury Road. And I love that about it. It feels different from Fury Road. And that's the biggest thing people are going to be going into this movie and probably taking away. A lot of people will probably complain about the pacing. I have a few issues with the pacing myself, especially in the first half. It is definitely a lot slower than Fury Road. It's definitely a lot slower than an average blockbuster, I would say. There's a lot of scenes of just showing Furiosa throughout her life, how she came to be. And honestly, I think that reflecting on the film after watching it, I think that watching it a second time, I will love that. I think that watching it a second time, I will appreciate that just so much more. Because there is so much to this film. It's so dense. It covers such a long period of time for a character. And I think that it might require 2 watches to really pick up on everything. And there's a lot of great stuff here. I had a smile on my face throughout the last half of the film when the action and the kinetic energy that Miller puts into his films just ramps up to 11. I can't sell enough how good the action in this film is. There's so much fun. There's so many surprises. My standout action sequence for me is easily the sequence probably in the middle of the film. It's a war rig sequence, and it's just one big scene. And it's so much fun. It's so interesting to see, and I just love all the little things that Miller puts in, all the little ideas that he has or gadgets that the Marauders or Raiders would use to try and get on the war rig. It's so much fun to see, and I loved that. There's so much to love in this film. There's so much that's good here, but I don't think it's perfect, so let's move on to the mix. And I think one thing, again, that I'm going to reiterate is just the pacing will be something that people probably won't love in this film. Like I mentioned, the first act is very, very like exposition or setup heavy. There's just a lot going on. Furiosa is really young, and so you don't really get to know her that much. The actress portraying her is great, but obviously Anya Taylor-Joy is like a renowned actress, and so as much as I appreciate it, and I'm not trying to dog on the kid here. The kid did great. The girl playing Furiosa in the beginning did wonderful. Every actor and actress in here does a great job. I don't want to undersell that at all. But I think the film, again, just gets so much more interesting, and it picks up so much steam when Furiosa comes in. And I know I mentioned that it would benefit from a rewatch, and that's something I'll appreciate more on rewatch, but I can see a few people watching this and being like, wow, Fury Road was so breakneck, like, where is that? Where is that? And kind of just waiting for that a lot of the film and maybe being a little disappointed, which in my opinion might be a little bit of an expectations thing. So before you see this, make sure you get your expectations in check. This is definitely more of a character-driven action film blockbuster than an action-driven action film like the last Mad Max was. And another thing I can see people really having an issue with is just the cinematography, the use of the camera, the editing style, some of the character appearances. It's a lot. I can see some people being like, this is way too weird for me. Why are there so many zooms and tilts and dolly shots? And there's a lot of kinetic energy in the camera, which I love. It just adds to the film overall. I do think that people will probably be like, why are there so many zoom in shots on people driving or dolly shots when people drive? I didn't have a problem with it. I mean, if you've seen Fury Road, you're totally used to it. If someone goes and sees this and is like, wow, what is going on? It's awesome. I think we need more dynamic camera movement in films. I love when people do that. George Miller is just having the time of his life, just throwing the cam operator all around the room, and the cinematographer is just having them do the same thing. They're just running the cam ops, the assistant directors. It's so much fun. I think the movie is just a lot of fun. However, I can see some people having a hard time getting into that. And now with my big issue, I think that maybe there were a few things here that shouldn't have been in the film. It should have been left on the cutting room floor, mostly with connections to Fury Road. There's a few things here, and I'm really trying to avoid maybe spoiling or giving anything away. It is a prequel, but there's a lot of connections here to Fury Road. I think that could have just been dropped. There's some interesting connections, like certain characters, like, oh, that's how they got there. That's interesting. That's how that happened. But I think there are a few things here that are just maybe over-explained. Could have been shortened just to tighten up that pacing just a little bit. But, I mean, I just had so much fun. And the score is great. I forgot to mention that earlier. So, while this mixed section is all over the place, mostly a disclaimer for people who will go into this film with different expectations. It's a Mad Max film. It's going to be so weird. It's going to be a lot to handle, but it's going to be so much fun. And I'm sitting here trying to think of negatives for the film. I'd say maybe the only thing that held it back just a little bit, there's just maybe a little too much of young Furiosa. Maybe a little too many, like one too many scenes of her growing up and in this different environment, or this different environment. A lot of the scenes are very interesting, and I did enjoy the majority of them, but again, I think maybe one of them could have been cut, because after a minute, it starts to become a little redundant. Her goal is set in place from the very beginning of the film, and then her arc is very clearly just charted out throughout. It's not extremely hard to follow, and so you can see where it's going, and since the later part of her arc is more engaging, I would say that I would have enjoyed maybe a little bit of cutting to that arc. I wouldn't say that there's anything that's just outright wasted in this film. I don't know if there's anything that's just like, why is that there? That doesn't deserve to be there. I think there's a few scenes here that are just like a little gross. Maybe that's with body or with like implied stuff with the wives. And that's just Mad Max. Sometimes it can be gross. But just keep that in mind as you go see the film. Overall, guys, Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga, is a blockbuster that, for me, lived up to the hype. This was one of my top 10 most anticipated films of the year, and it did not disappoint. This was number 4. I'm very happy to report this is probably my second or third favorite of the year. Definitely my top 5, and I'm very interested to see how everything shakes out as the year goes on. This is a movie that I will be dying to rewatch. I hope I can see it in IMAX, because even just the sound and spectacle in my small theater was enough to get me so excited, a grin on my face. And I can't understate how good the action and how much fun this movie really is. So overall, Furiosa of Mad Max Saga is going to get a 9 out of 10 for me. Absolutely just peak. Not perfect peak, but it is peak. I had a great time with this film, and I think that you will too. If you like Fury Road, you will probably really like Furiosa. I do think, in my opinion, Fury Road is maybe my preferred film between the two. I would hesitate to call it a better film because I think Furiosa does a lot more in terms of character work and understanding the world, but Mad Max Fury Road is just so fun, just a straight balls to the wall action movie. With that being said, thank you so much for watching. We hit 500 subscribers. I'm so happy about that. On to 1,000. We can do it before the year's end. I'm sure we can hit like 1,200 before the year is over. I can double. Easy. We got this. I'm having so much fun making these videos, and it's all thanks to you guys, so thank you very much. If you've seen Furiosa, let me know what you think down in the comments below, and as always, have a great rest of your day.